If you want to learn how to take awesome, dreamy waterfall photos, you are in the right place. So I've been in a bit of a rut lately and been struggling to just get my ass out of the house to go and take some photos. It's that time of year, we're all busy with Christmas stuff, and it can kind of take a back seat. But I forced myself out the door last week. I was like, I'm gonna go do it. And I went and took some photos of waterfalls and did a little bit of experimenting with doing some handheld shots as well. And I wanted to teach you how to do it because it's actually super easy to take amazing waterfall photos, and I didn't even use a filter or anything. So stay tuned to learn how you can get photos like this. So firstly, the equipment that you're going to need. Of course, you're going to need a camera, preferably one that you can change the shutter speed on. You can set the shutter speed yourself because that is super important. Number two, you might want a tripod because if you have a tripod, then you can have a longer exposure of like 1 second, 2 seconds, and you can get more of that movement of the water in your photo, which gives you that kind of soft looking, wispy water that looks really cool. Thirdly, obviously you're going to need a lens on that camera, and it could be any lens. You can pick any lens you want because any lens will work for taking waterfall photos. I prefer to use a wide angle lens because then I can get up quite close to the rocks and the water, but still get everything in the shot. So this time I used my Canon, what is it? It's my 24-105. That's what it was. Almost had a mind blank there. So I used my Canon 24-105 and I did some shots on the tripod and some handheld. I had to use different settings, which I'll go through for each of those. But I did not take an ND filter this time, which sometimes I do use when I'm trying to capture movement in the water. But in the bush where I was taking the photos, it was completely in shade. So it's a little bit darker in there, so I didn't actually need to take an ND filter. So keep watching to find out exactly the settings I used and how I took these photos. So this is the beautiful place that I went to take these photos. It's just like not that far down the road for me, probably like a 10-minute drive, and I love going here just to practice, and I get something different every time, which is really cool. I actually started at the top of this waterfall right up there. You can just see it in the distance. And then I made my way down here a bit later on where there's some kind of cool trees you can see in the middle of this river. It's just a great place to go and explore and experiment with my camera. So I started off on the tripod. Please don't look at my tripod setup because it is terrible. And then I took it off the tripod and went handheld so I could just get a little bit more creative and get the camera in places where it can't go on the tripod. And even at a reasonably fast shutter speed, for this type of photography anyway, at an eighth of a second, say, I could still get quite a bit of movement in the water because the water here is flowing quite fast. When you're shooting handheld like this though, you do need to make sure that you keep the camera really steady. I like to rest the camera on my hand, which then I rest on a rock or a branch, or otherwise if you don't have anything like that, you can kind of brace your elbows and onto your knees or into your ribs, and that helps quite a bit. So this is one of my favourite shots from up the top near the big waterfall, and this is totally raw, straight out of the camera, this shot. I shot it at ISO 100. Aperture was at f14 and the shutter speed was half a second. This one was on the tripod to keep it a bit more stable, and I really like the amount of movement that's in the water there and the nice green rocks in the front. So for this one I took the camera off the tripod and went handheld so I could get it a bit closer to some of that greenery in there and a little bit closer to the water as well. You can see it's still quite fast, it's fast moving water, so we've still got quite a bit of blur in that water, which I really love. It makes it look really beautiful. So the settings for this one was ISO 100, aperture f9, and shutter speed was 1/8 of a second. You can see this one's actually quite dark. It's raw, unedited. I'll brighten it up a little bit in Lightroom, but sometimes when I'm shooting water especially, I don't want the shot to get blown out, so I'll sometimes go a little bit darker because I can always brighten it up a little bit in Lightroom. You don't want to go too dark though, because then sometimes when you try and bring back the blacks, your photo gets a bit grainy looking, especially if you are using shadows in Lightroom to bring it back. So that's the shoot. It was super fun and super easy, and I know that you can do it as well. And if you want to see how I edited these photos, then you'll just have to subscribe and turn your alerts on so you can see the next video that I am going to make on how I edited the waterfall photos. So stay tuned for that, and don't forget to click my link down in the description below to take my quiz on what kind of landscape photographer you are. Why not go find out, because it is super interesting and there's heaps of different types of landscape photographers out there. So let me know in the comments which one you are. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.